Hello, I'm Scott Clover, and you're listening to the Intuitive Energy Podcast. This podcast series is about intuition, healing, and creating new energetic patterns that benefit you in your daily life. In my private practice, I help people heal from a diverse range of issues, including self-acceptance, trauma release, managing anxiety, emboldening self-worth, and creative expression. This special episode is about energy healing and how it can help people with trauma and addiction issues. I was fortunate enough to be interviewed by Tamar from the Road Beyond Recovery podcast, and we had a great conversation that was too good not to share on this platform. We spoke about observing patterns, accepting existing realities, how to feel safe in your body, why some people with certain backgrounds can't seem to meditate, and healing and recovery. Enjoy!
My name is Tamar. I'm incredibly grateful for learning about energy, first of all, and also having the ability to work with someone like Scott that allowed me to unblock some of those walls that I was putting up, those emotional barriers. Although I think that I'm working on them, I can actually physically feel sometimes when I'm not either allowing love in or I'm not expressing love or letting it out like I should. And so now I've actually spent some time working on grounding, working on my energy flow. And it's just opening up a whole bunch of new things to explore. It's not often that I actually get to work with someone before I interview them, because I believe that what he does, just by hearing about it, we had a great conversation the first time we spoke, and he said, listen, I would love to do some work with you first, and then we could do the interview, because then you can specifically talk about your experience, right? Because it's not his story to share. He doesn't come on the show and share about other people's journeys, because only you can share that. And so, of course, I love learning new things. I'm all about self-improvement, and I feel, oftentimes when I'm emotional or I'm stressed or I'm thinking about something and getting stuck in my head, I have this, almost tightness in my chest, in my heart, as though I'm not fully giving love. I'm not fully allowing myself to receive it, including the energy. I carry my stress in my shoulders, right? When things start to get stressful, I can really feel it in my neck and my shoulders and different parts of my body. And so to have somebody be able to work through that and explain energy healing was so phenomenal. So I actually share my experience and what I had worked on the first time, and then how that shifted from the second time we worked together, which was just before we recorded this episode. I asked Scott, what is intuitive energy healing and how does it work? And we talk about patterns and accepting your existing reality, polarity, and engaging opposite energy. There's so much valuable information. I have specific questions that I want to ask him. He does not know about them. That's not the way he operates. And so I'm really excited to really dig further into this energy healing journey. But I hope you enjoy this episode. Well, I'm excited today because I'm hanging out with my friend, Scott Clover. How are you, Scott?
Yeah, I'm well, thanks.
I love what you do, and I've got to experience it twice now. And I want to share a little bit about my journey in how that happened and what happened. And I think that you have such a gift and you do help so many people. So for those that don't know you, who are you and what do you do, Scott?
I'm Scott Clover. I'm an intuitive energy healer, which generally means I guide people towards helping them heal themselves. A lot of people that say they're healers, they want to force a healing energy onto their client. And over the years, I've found the efficacy of that doesn't last as long as if the client is informed of their own energies and how to navigate, transmute, switch, purge those. So my clients call me the energetic plumber, because I help people clear out different pathways for themselves or clean off patterns that they can then observe them. I'm an intuitive, so I see and sense patterns in and around people's bodies, in and around their energy fields, their auric fields, their generational patterns, parental patterns or ancestors, as well as maybe a past life will come through. If that keeps people repeating a pattern, then it comes to the surface. So I've sort of trained myself over the years to see what I need to see and not see everything, because overseeing would just give me a sunburned brain. So there is such thing as being too psychic, I have to say. And so, as I said, I've trained myself to just see in the moment what needs to be seen for what the issue is that the person's going through that sees me.
I've experienced it now firsthand, right? And I have to admit, before I came into recovery, I was very skeptical about all this stuff, right? And I learned mindfulness and I became a little bit more spiritually fit, and now I'm really diving into different areas because even though I'm 9 years sober, I still have a lot of healing to do, right? There's a lot of things that I've held on to. And so one of the areas when we first met that I talked to you about is that I had just gone through a temporary breakup, right? I had a fracture in my relationship. I was heartbroken. I had no idea which way I wanted to go because I wasn't sure if I wanted to stay in or I wanted to stay out. And so I was protecting myself, but at the same time, I wanted to love, I wanted to get love in, but I didn't know how. And through doing a lot of soul searching, I had realized that I never had both feet into that relationship, right? And I've
Hmm.
done that as a protection. And I look back at all my relationships in the past and notice this pattern now. It's like as soon as things get a little bit tough, one foot goes out the door and I start planning my future for myself, by myself, thinking that there's something better out there. And you and I spoke, and I think you asked me the question, do you think these changes are going to last? And at the time, because I was so blocked and I was so stuck, I didn't know. And I said, no, I don't think so, because history would dictate that the changes have not stuck and, the growth wasn't there. And so that's what I was desperately seeking. And I do believe people can change. I do believe that things happen in people's lives that trigger that desire to become a better person or to really make some positive changing. And I remember we started off and you had sensed that there was blockage around my heart, kind of some stuff going on in my chest there. And that's where I felt it. Like it was a very tightness in my chest. I felt it in my neck and shoulders. I've always had tension there. And so we, went through the practice of kind of unblocking that. So, from my side, I could feel that energy. I could feel, you would ask me to move my hand around different places and feel certain, parts of my body. And I could feel, which was really cool. Like, and especially because we're doing this over the phone, I'm thinking, wow, like this feels really neat. And I could literally feel the tension start to ease and things start to open up. And, you had used the fireflies in the jar thing and letting the fireflies out, which was really cool. And that really resonated with me. So that was my experience on my side of the line. But can you talk about what's going on there and what you sensed in me?
Well, it's more for you to speak on your situation, what happened with you. I'll speak to the general energy around it so it keeps it a little cleaner.
Sure.
Um, and it's your story to share. It's not my story to share, but I can
Yeah.
explain to you the energetic backbones or the structures, why and how that happened. How about that?
Hmm.
You keep it personal and I'll keep it energetic.
Sounds good.
Anywhere in the body can hold on to trauma, blocked emotions, physical traumas, betrayals, things that happen to us over our lifetime. People in recovery are struggling to get through some sort of energetic betrayal. Some kink in their energetic hosing got kinked, and they've been trying to find a sense of self ever since. And so when the drugs and alcohol no longer work, then they have to start going back inside. And that's when the work that I do comes into play. It's about embodiment, it's about feeling safe in your body. Most people that abuse drugs and alcohol don't feel safe in their body, so they distance themselves from their bodies. Now, those are legal or illegal drugs, but the pharmaceutical companies and the universe at large in society has, for the last 50 years, tried to separate us from our energetic bodies.
Hmm.
Right as the spiritual or hippie movement started, that's when the pharmaceuticals came out to take this pill and separate you from your pain. Well, if you sequester yourself from your pain, it just festers. It doesn't get any air, it doesn't heal. And so, what I do is I uncover why it could be covered up, how it's festering, what direction it's flowing, how the pattern revolves in on itself. So, emotional situations or these issues that people deal with in recovery are sort of in a vacuum, which means the energy and the pattern is going to continue unless something interacts with it, which is the nature of velocity in a vacuum. So unless you can interact with it, it's going to keep repeating itself. And one way you can interact with it is having someone like me help you visualize it in a new context. And since I use my visionary skills to see it in a way, I can take that and put it into a metaphor, and using that metaphor help you understand what's happening to you.
Mm-hmm.
And once you understand it and observe it, then it's acted upon. Because as we know by quantum physics, once something's observed, then it has a different reaction than it does when it's being unobserved.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the cornerstones of my work is to show people where they cloaked their inner child, where they put their inner child in a protective box and then left it there. So it didn't get the nourishment that it needed. It didn't get the sunlight that it needed. It didn't get the adolescence that it deserved. And once that's observed and those childhood memories or responses are let free to mature, that can happen very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But it needs to be allowed to happen. Whereas the drugs and the alcohol just placate it and keep it where it is. And then we forget about it because we're having fun or we're distancing ourselves from the actual pain. So what I say in my work is observation is about 55% of the work.
Mm-hmm.
Once you observe the pattern, then you can change it. But a lot of people can't observe the pattern because they put what I call invisibility cloaks over that part of their psyche because it hurt too much to look at.
Mm-hmm.
So even now, people can't see it. And they go in and they want to see it and they can't see it. Why? Because it's invisible. So they come to somebody like me and I'm like, oh, we got a Klingon or we got a little something down there that's hanging out. Let's excavate that and see what's in there. And they're like, there it is. Oh, you're right. Yeah, she's wounded or he's perturbed or he feels alone,
Mm-hmm.
But it's just as you said, it's snapping out of a pattern. And the only way to do that is acting on the pattern differently. And the best way to do that in my work is to observe the pattern for what it is, not
Right.
what you want it to be. The more you want something to be, the less it's going to be the reality of it, which means you can't change it because you're giving it the wrong medicine or the wrong antidote.
Mm-hmm. And I think speaking from personal experience is I've wanted things to be a certain way. And then there's that friction that happens when it doesn't happen, right? Which we call it expectations. But I noticed a big shift from the time that we first met until we most recently met. So that was about over I think a 5 to 6 week time frame. And there was such a difference in, I think, my ability to really open that door to what love could really look like
Mm-hmm.
and being truly accepting. And I noticed that, as we started to work through things, as he took the necessary steps because of what he had experienced in this fracture, and I took the steps to look at my codependent behavior, right? That's something that I chatted with you that I'm really diving into because I can still let other people's behaviors or actions affect me, right? And that's something that I need to definitely dive into. But as we kind of went on our own journey, I noticed that my heart started to open up and receive that love that he was now willing to give in the way that I needed it. And I was able to do the same, right? Which it's always kind of, I'm looking out for number one. I'm looking for myself. And if you don't want to come with me, then forget it. And so what I've noticed now is there's this exchange in love coming in and love coming out. Like that energy feels a lot more open and flowing. But, you had pointed out that, hey, you still have this little knot in you. And, I told you about a situation that I'm dealing with right now. And
Mm-hmm.
it was exactly the same thing, right? And as we did that work, things started flowing. Like I could literally feel, energy coming out of the bottom of my chair going into the ground. But it was absolutely incredible, and I feel that energy flowing right now, even as we speak.
Yeah, it's visceral. And
Oh,
hearing my voice, the body remembers what happened while we were working. So it starts to happen again. Yeah.
yeah. Oh, it was such an amazing experience.
Well, you were talking about reciprocity, energetic reciprocity. So if you're not exchanging a proper amount of energy, then one side is top heavy or one side is depleted. So you've heard it several times. You can't serve from an empty bowl. That's one of them.
Mhm.
Put your mask on before you put the mask on of someone next to you, that kind of stuff. And we, especially as empaths and people that have wounded childhoods, have a really hard time doing that. They're over placators. They want to help. Well, if they don't receive help too, then they're off balance. And once again, addiction loves people that are off balance. So if you overtake and feel guilty about it, then you drink. And if you overgive and then you're depleted, then you want to forget about it, so you drink. Or whatever your drug of choice is. So the point of this is understanding an energetic reciprocity. It doesn't have to be 50-50. That's a pipe dream and doesn't really exist. right? But if you're at 60/40 and you're doing self-care, as they're calling it these days, as well as tithing or helping other people, then good for you. But if you're overgiving or overtaking, well, then people either think you're mushy or an asshole. So you have to decide that for your own right, but understanding that that reciprocity isn't there is so difficult for people to self-observe, which is
Yeah.
another reason why you come to somebody who observes patterns. But as you were saying, you use the gesticulation coming and going. It's yin yang, lingam yoni, male female, giving receiving. That polarity has to be an exchange. If not, then the person's going to feel out of equilibrium and less embodied, which would lead them to distance themselves or disassociate.
Right. So can you I could talk about this on and on and on. For accepting existing realities, because I
Okay.
think this is something in recovery that I know I personally have struggled with, right? Accepting your
Mm-hmm.
reality is something that's really tough. But can you get a little deeper into that? Because I know that's something you also talk to clients about.
Oh, definitely. Well, in the work, authenticity is sort of where we head. When people start working with me, we ultimately are going to funnel down to authenticity, right? Well, it's a lot easier to get to that authenticity part or even to start that journey if you accept the existing reality of where you're at. So desiring something that's impossible is not accepting the existing reality, right? Accepting that in the drugs and alcohol that you did, you offended your friends or family. Wishing you didn't doesn't take it back, and you're not facing it. So if you accept the existing reality that I was a jerk, but I don't have to be a jerk because I'm choosing not to be because I accepted that I am or was, then that those pathways don't become so divergent, and the path becomes pretty clear of what you're dealing with, what you need to do, and what you can do.
Hmm.
But wanting to be different doesn't make you different. It just drains your energy.
And that brings me to the fake it till you make it, right? Because I hear that slogan a lot and I know how you feel about that, right? Can you talk about that? Because, I hear a lot of people, even in business, talk about the whole fake it till you make it.
Well, okay, so you're talking about a concept, and so what I'm talking about is the energy roots to the phrasing. And
Yeah.
what I really find discordant is the idea that you're trying to change yourself for the better and then you're labeling it as fake.
Mm.
So that's my issue. It's the semantical name. It's the semantical nomenclature that I have an issue with. The energetic principle to what you're referring to, which I won't repeat, is I'm willing to shift my energy. And if I do it a little, then I'll be judged. So I might as well tell people I'm faking it until I can do it for real. Well, then you're just saying to the world, hey, I'm a faker. Well, nobody respects fakers. So don't fake it till you make it. Desire your energy to change, mimic that pattern. And then the more you mimic that pattern, the more you become that pattern. It's just like if your nervous system is changing its motor pattern after an injury. You're not faking that your motor pattern is different. The motor pattern will change as you heal, and then the body responds. But you have to acknowledge that the motor pattern needs to change. So that expression you used, I would more think it's more semantically and energetically appropriate that the universe will actually agree with you and work for you as opposed to faking it, is I'm adopting a new pattern, help me get there.
Mm.
I'm adopting a new pattern, let me look at that pattern and I'll mimic it until it becomes my own, which is the inverse of how most people get damaged enough to be led to drug and alcohol addiction, which is they mimic their family patterns, which are unhealthy. It's like a tuning fork. If you know the principles of a tuning fork, if you have the same tuning fork tuned to the same thing, you hit one, and the other one across the room will start to vibrate in the same vibration.
Hmm.
So now you've got two tuning forks vibrating. Some people use a candle. If you have one candle lit, and that's your parental energy, and it's burning, then the child is desperate. So they go over and they want to alleviate the burning candle energy of the parents' struggle. Well, what happens when you light one candle off the other? You
They're
just have
both on
two,
fire.
they're both on fire.
Yeah.
But the original intention of the 3 or 4-year-old was my mom or dad are in pain. I'm going to go and extinguish that pain by taking it on myself. Well, now you've just got two people in pain, but you're processing it through your reality, not your parents' reality, which makes it more difficult for you to purge because it's technically not even yours. You adopted a pattern from somewhere else. Then over time, it becomes yours. So you faked it until you maked it, if you would, or you mimicked a pattern until it became your own. Recovery is unlearning that pattern, accepting the existing reality that my dad was a jerk, or my mom was a narcissist, or they were abusive, or they didn't take care of me, or they smothered me because I was an only child and I have to get away from them. So I started smoking weed when I was 14 because they were oppressive. So you can't have it both ways, psyche, but either way is a polarity. And most people want to live in the median. And when you go outside that median of overtaken care of or undertaken care of, then you're more liable to abuse drugs and alcohol as an escape mechanism.
Mm-hmm. Wow, it just, when you say it, it just makes so much sense. So you've talked a lot about patterns, right?
Mm-hmm.
And observing them can lead to healing. Can you talk a little bit more about that and how does one observe their patterns that can lead to healing?
Right. So observation, as I say, is 55% of the healing energy. Well, you don't go to the doctor and say something's wrong with me. And he says, what's wrong? And he says, well, I don't know. Well, he can't give you medicine to help you if that's what you're into.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to acknowledge what's up with you so you can change it. Wanting to be different or wanting to be healed is not the same as seeing why you're damaged. Once again, accepting the existing reality, I'm damaged or kinked, or there's a dent in my armor. How do we unkink the dents? So one way is to be quiet with yourself. And I don't mean meditation per se, because a lot of people don't have the patience or the ability to meditate because it means going and being quiet in their own bodies. And that's where a lot of the people experience the trauma. So why relive the trauma in your body? I should stay out of my body. Well, drugs and alcohol help that. So the recovery people now are saying, okay, I don't want to use this as a coping mechanism, but yet it's still difficult to be inside my body. Well, meditate. Some people that try to meditate, they start to shake and they like vibrate out of the room and they can't do it and they never go and do it again. So one thing is to understand you don't feel safe in your body. Once you accept that reality, then there are new somatic technologies out there to gently, gracefully fold yourself or welcome yourself back into your body.
Mm-hmm.
And we did some of those exercises yourself. Grounding exercises are not meditation. Trying to calm your nervous system is not meditation. But your nervous system is what's on high or parasympathetic or too sympathetic. Whatever state it's in, if it's not in equilibrium, then you're feeling agitated.
Mm-hmm.
Or you're feeling a malaise that you can't lift your head off the pillow. Neither one of those are optimal.
You know, it's true. A lot of people in recovery, because they talk about mindfulness, they talk about meditation, and that it's a key part to your recovery.
Unless you can't do it.
Exactly. We have a hard time doing it, right? And that was
course.
what I was going to ask,
Of
right?
course.
Was, why we can't seem to do this. And what is the solution for someone that has been trying it and just feels, because I know even I can be sitting there meditating and I'm thinking, oh, I wonder if my laundry is ready to turn over. Oh, my stomach's growling. I should probably go grab a snack right now because I'm actually hungry, right? So what is the solution?
And what I'm talking about is more of an energetic pattern in that I can tell you that the client has like a vibrating spinal column that's vibrating really high. And if they're quiet enough to hear it, then you're never going to technically fall asleep. So your body's always on high alert. If that's one thing you can calm down, then your nervous system gets the message that there's other aspects and other things you can do to calm yourself down. That would be one example. Go back to the nervous system. But then the endocrine system gets involved and the hormonal system gets involved. It can be a house of cards or a domino effect, but that can also work on the inverse. If I sense a problem with the diaphragm being overly contracted, then the person isn't breathing correctly, which means they're sore under their armpits and they don't feel energy. And if you get that breathing technique under control and you get the person to breathe down to their belly button or breathe down to their pelvis, which historically never made it past their rib cage, they're taking on a whole new energy element that's going to bolster them into maybe their next set of healing. But it generally, for me, it leads me back to the body. almost always goes, let's go back to the body. And as my mentor said to me when I met with him years ago, and I'd been through therapist after therapist, and talk therapy just turned out to not to be my thing. Well, look at me now. He asked me, how does my body feel? And I almost resented the question. I don't want to tell you how my body feels because I don't want to feel how my body feels. Aha. So that was the question that changed my life. No therapist historically had asked me anything about my body or about my intuitive abilities, even though I'd asked or tried to. And he sat me down and I put out in the universe, hey, I need someone else to help me figure this out because talk therapy isn't doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a somatic therapist. Focalizing is what it's called. And yeah, the first or second session, he asked me, how does my body feel? And I resented the question. How dare you ask me that? Because it meant I would have to feel in my own body. Well, that's what I help now people do for myriad reasons, whether it's having creative restraints or getting over past traumas. So my work isn't all doldrummy historic childhood trauma. A lot of it is that, and I'm very grateful that I'm able to help people with it because it's a very cathartic and uplifting experience when it happens, even in community when I'm working with the client. But I also work with people who are, creatives that want to express themselves more, or actors or singers that want to expand where they're at. So I get to do both sides.
Mm-hmm. And I think for myself in my journey right now, I've hit a point in my recovery where I'm doing what I love to do, right? I'm working with
Mhm.
people, I'm trying to help others, I'm sharing my journey. And so, I really want to help people kind of get out of that complacency. And I think that the work that you do, right, to unblock that almost, I feel like it almost opened up a new level of how I was able to communicate and give love and also receive love. Because right now, I mean, even this morning, my spouse, when he knew when I had to get up and walked in with a cup of coffee and breakfast, and he's never done that, right? And he was a big smile on his face, and you could see how authentic he was being about that. And it was just, usually I'd be like, oh, why are you waking me up? Like, come on. And this morning it was like, wow, thank you. Like, I love you, right? And it felt,
Love and gratitude. Love and gratitude. Now you're talking about Emoto. Masaru Emoto. Read his book. It's amazing.
is
The
it?
guy who takes pictures of water molecules as they're crystallizing, and love and happiness, they're all brilliant, and like fear and hate are all crumpled up. For the energetically minded, it helps expand your concept of what's possible
Oh, I'm definitely going to pick
just
that
through the
up.
water molecules, because it means there's meaning behind our words and the intention behind our words.
Hmm.
And the word love is love, but it also is amitié or amour, right?
Yeah.
So that vibration is very similar. Even though the word is different, the vibration is similar and received as well.
Hmm. Yeah, it feels good. I have to say, for the first time in a very long time, I feel that love, right? And it feels incredible. And I wanted to ask you, did you always know growing up that you were intuitive? Like, is that something you knew as a young child, or is that something you developed as you got older?
So I was extremely intuitive as a child,
Hmm.
to the point of people wondering what's up with that kid. And then around 11 or 12, I could feel the things that I was able to pick up made my peers uncomfortable.
Mm.
And so it was at that point, that pre-puberty, I want to fit in middle school, I started realizing what I was able to do was ostracizing me because people started thinking I was weird, or I could sense that they didn't want to interact with me anymore because I was bothering them. I either knew too much about them, or I was too personal with them, or I knew stuff about them, or I knew answers to questions and it was intimidating to people. So I pulled back on it, and I made a conscious effort, I think, to say, whatever that is, I didn't know what it was, but I said, whatever that is, it makes me different. I don't want to be that. And I put it in a locked Pandora's box with chain around it and threw it at the bottom of the ocean. And for years, it would burp open and cause issues personally with friends and things like that, because I wasn't accepting it, but yet it was coming in really strongly in different ways, to the point that finally, ultimately, I had to deal with it. And once in midlife, I realized I had to deal with it. After a couple of years of studying it and understanding myself and my prowess, I really wanted to cater it to healing, because I knew that's where my skills set was developing for, or my sort of archetypal pattern was catered to someone who helps people heal.
Hmm.
So I'm not the kind of psychic that wants to tell you your future as much as help you create a better reality
Hmm.
by cleaning up your past and creating a template of a pattern for the future that's so followable that you fall right into prosperity or joy or something like that. So that's where my skill set lies now. But that took years of training and going through my own gauntlets of fire. But I got through it, and now I'm able to do what I do. And how neat, I have to say. Like, I really enjoy my profession because I say I do what I am. I know my abilities. I catered them to be more specific, and now I'm able to help people, which is what I was intended to do, I think.
Absolutely. And that's actually allowed you to embrace what you do more today.
Right. And that's one of the cornerstones of my work, is to help people understand how intuitive they are, and that it matters to them on their terms, not my terms. Don't be as psychic as James Van Prague, or don't be as psychic as me. Be as intuitive as you are, and utilize that information for good, for your betterment and the betterment of others. And I think you got a little Brene Brown up in there with, your vulnerability becomes your strength.
Yeah.
Where you were weakest, you can now show strength and support other people where they can fill in their gaps. And that's, along the lines of something that I do, is I really want to encourage people to talk about intuition freely, create a tribe about it. Because right now there's a bunch of us individuals that are doing it, and there's no associations or tribes or anything like that, which over time, once that happens, then it gets more solidified in the zeitgeist, if you will. But for now, like, I'm word of mouth. I do very little advertising, if any. It's because people find me when they're ready.
Yeah.
And I don't force my skill set or my healing onto people. You have to ask me for help, and then I'll guide you.
Yeah.
Yeah. But a lot of people, they start with this, and they're so inclined to want to help. Well, they burn out real fast, and they cross some boundaries. So what I say is, mind your own energy. Heal yourself until you have something to offer, not beforehand.
Yeah. I agree. And that's one of the things I had to do in recovery, right? I had to build that solid foundation. I went through a good period there where I was complacent and thinking, okay, now what? Like, I had this something within me that was like dying to get out. But I'm like, no. Like, you have a good job, great career. You have a partner. Life is good. You should just shut up and be grateful. Right. And I felt that was a complete opposite of what I actually wanted.
Yeah.
But I just thought, listen, your life was a shit show before this. Like, come on, be happy with what you have now. But I never was. Like me, I go all in with most things, and I experience burnout very quickly. So I had to make that decision.
Well, because you were overgiving.
Yeah.
That's the pattern that you needed resolving.
Yeah.
And being vulnerable to saying, oh, I learned from my mistakes, emboldens you. It doesn't empower you, because empowerment can be fleeting, but it emboldens you. It locks you into a certain stability and says, oh, I don't want to go dip below this any longer. So I prefer the word embolden.
I like that. I'm going to write that down. So you mentioned you help other people learn about their own intuitiveness. Are a lot of people intuitive? And can you sense that in people pretty quickly?
I can sense it in people pretty quickly. Most people are. There's some people who just don't want to be, so they're not. A lot of it comes from will and intention and understanding and compassion for self, for what you're experiencing. And then you have to accept that it's real. And once you do that, then it's a lot easier for you to trust. But you can't expect other people to trust you if you don't trust yourself and your own intuition. So there is work to be done. And not everyone's, a mind reader. Not everyone's a tarot reader. Not everyone's what I am or what you are, whatever. You are what you are. And wanting to change it is going to be frustrating. So accept what your intuition is and work off from there.
Yeah.
But a lot of people want to train or read a book and say, well, I have to be just as good of a medium as John Edwards. Well, you're not going to be. So be as good as you are at whatever it is you are.
That really resonated. So thank you for sharing that with me.
Sure. It's something I'm really pleased to talk about at any moment, because it's not spoken about enough.
Yeah, I agree.
There's not enough teachers out there. So people gravitate to the powerful ones, or the most, not powerful, I should say, the most publicized ones. And it's not about mimicking what they are. It's gleaning the information from them and metabolizing it and extrapolating it and using it through your own filter. So then you can present your message. And if that message is authentic enough, then people are going to resonate with it.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's not, then people are going to smell you and go, no, that's not fully cooked, or, that's not fully fleshed out. If I hear the term spiritual badass one more time, I'm just gonna pop a cork. Oh my God. I was at a conference once, and this woman, I presented something, and some woman said, "Can I give you a hug?" And I looked down, and she had a heavily meditated sweatshirt on that said, like a sweatshirt that said heavily meditated. And I was like, no, you can't have a hug. But I want to hug you. I'm like, that's fine. You want to hug me, but I don't want you to hug me because I don't want to exchange energy with you right now. I just came off a presentation and you want something from me that I'm not willing to give you. So my boundary is no. But it was that t-shirt that really struck it out for me. Was, that's a very superficial view of what people are terming spirituality.
Right.
Which for me, it's just energy. I call myself an energy healer. I'm non-dogmatic. As best as I can be, I'm non-dogmatic. It's really about energy patterns, either being conducive to one or not being conducive to one.
Mm-hmm.
And being optimal with that. Meaning you may not be the best, or you may not change yourself for the best, because changing you for the best might change your family dynamic in such a way that it hurts you in the end. So you want to change yourself optimally. You want to be as optimally good or better as you can. But being best is not possible. It's not even plausible. So stop it. What you can be is optimal for the situation you're in and the life you're leading.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I want, right? I want to be optimal.
Well, that's generally what we all should vibrate towards. That should be what we're holding space for. That's the vibration that we're ultimately searching for.
Right.
To search to be the best, don't even start that marathon because you'll be exhausted.
Yeah.
There's an eternal rung. That ladder has infinitesimal rungs on it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I love how you mentioned the spiritual aspect, because I remember I had a very profound spiritual awakening when I came into recovery, and I finally realized that I'm not alone in this world, right? And I never grew up religious or anything like that, but I think a lot of people I see, they want that experience, right? They want that big flashing lights, like, I don't know, whatever they think that's going to happen. But when we were doing our sessions, I could feel the energy going through me, and that felt very spiritual. A lot of people seek that feeling. I love how you mentioned that spirituality is really energy, because that's what it felt like. It felt like a very spiritual experience to me.
Well, yes, that thing where the Sistine Chapel where God touches man like that. I mean, all you're doing is getting in touch with your own body. You call that a spiritual experience. I just call it unclogging your energy pathways.
Yeah.
You said it yourself. I felt energy flowing through me.
Yeah.
So that's called spiritual because there's not another name for it right now. But all it was you entertaining the fact that you can be in touch and secure in your own energies, and that makes you feel better. Mm-hmm. That to me isn't spiritual. That's just energetic congruence. But be involved with your healing. If you're interested, then be present and be involved in your healing, and I will meet you more than halfway.
Yeah, awesome.
But you're doing the work. I'm not doing the work. I'm the librarian. You walk into the library. I tell this story all the time. But you walk into the library and there's 60,000 books, and you're like, how the hell am I supposed to know how to heal myself? Well, I'm the librarian. I will lead you to the book. I will lead you to the rack, the stack. I will point to the book. I may even pull the book down and open it for you. You're reading the book. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to read the book for you. So that's where it is. It's healing in community. If you're involved, then I'll meet you more than halfway. But a lot of people see me once or twice and they realize the efficacy of the work and how intense it is. And then they don't call me back because they're not ready. So a lot of people think they're ready to heal because they're used to talk therapy, which means you just talk in circles around whatever problem you want, rehashing it. Or you come to someone like me, I'm ready and willing to help you, but you're going to need to show up and say, I'm ready for change. Mm-hmm. Like you experienced it yourself.
Yeah.
You really yearned for that reciprocity. You just didn't have the words for it or the guidance to unblock that heart wall, if you will.
Yeah.
And once you learned it, you went like this with your hands, which made me smile so much, because that's exactly what we had talked about, if you remember, was an equal transference of energy to make both sides egalitarian, if you will.
Yeah. It was incredible. Absolutely incredible. I can't wait till we do it again, to be honest.
You've been listening to the Intuitive Energy Podcast with me, Scott Clover. Thanks to Corey Tutt for the music you're listening to. In my private practice, I encourage people to heal what holds you back and feel better in your body. If you need more help with that process, I'm available for healing sessions by phone internationally. Visit scottclover.com for more information. Be well, and thanks for listening. This podcast is for educational and informational purposes only, and solely as a self-help tool for your own use. I'm not providing medical, psychological, or nutrition therapy advice. You should not use this information to diagnose or treat any health problems or illnesses without consulting your own medical practitioner. Always seek the advice of your own medical practitioner and/or mental health provider about your specific health situation. For my full disclaimer, please go to scottclover.com/disclaimer.